Hello there. Welcome to a special edition of Crucial Tech. We're going to do something a little bit different today because I'm going to be recording this on video. You're listening to the audio if you're listening to the podcast, but it's also going to be available up on YouTube, and that will be that link will be available in the discussion or the blurb about this. The reason I wanted to do is I mentioned the issue of tracking when it comes to dealing with this particular outbreak, how important that is. And I actually went and participated in a study yesterday where I got my nose swabbed, or actually I swabbed my nose to see if I had the coronavirus, but it's mostly to establish a baseline so they can determine this is what a healthy person looks like without the coronavirus, and this is what it looks like when they do have it. Who knows? Maybe I do. I don't know. I have no symptoms, but who knows? I think I might have had it back in February because I was quite sick back in February, and the symptoms line up. But that was before we knew what was going on and before I could get tested for it, and I recovered. So anyway, I was talking about the issue of tracking apps, so that we can, or contact tracking apps. I've mentioned before that companies like Apple, Microsoft, Google, Facebook, they're all tracking us with their apps. Most of the time I don't have the apps on my phone because I don't want to be tracked. I want to hold on to my privacy, and I don't want my information to be used for sale. But in this particular case, the greater good is not my privacy. And so that's what these apps are supposed to be for. Now, in my last podcast, I talked about what contact tracing is. So you can go check that out. But we can't do contact tracing for this particular virus simply because it's too massive. If you had a small group of people, it'd be easier to do. But we need to have some sort of technology involved. And that means tracking where you are, who you've been with, when you were with them, where you went afterwards. That seems pretty invasive, but this disease is pretty invasive. And at the end of this demonstration, I'm going to get into some arguments about that that you can use when you're talking to people about whether this is important or not. But anyway, yesterday I got my phone and I downloaded an app. This one happens to be made by the good folks at Johns Hopkins University, and it is called Safe Paths. Here, I'm going to open it up for you. And here we go. It's probably backwards on the screen, but yeah, you can get the idea. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through the process about what it takes to get there. So I'm going Get Started. I clicked on that, and that brings me up to the terms of usage, and it essentially says this is what we're going to do. And I go ahead, and I'm not going to read that to you. I have read it. I realize I'm giving up a lot of personal information, but I'm willing to do it for the greater good for you guys. So I tap on Accept the Licensing, and I go to Continue, and it takes me to the next step where it says Safe Paths can privately save your places you visit and store them on your phone. Now this is where this thing falls down, because this will help me know about it, and it may alert me as to when I come into contact with somebody else. And as we are opening up, there may be that possibility that I come across someone who comes down with it, and this can alert me that this person's has become sick. I don't know who they are. I don't know where I've met them, but that means I should go in and get tested, because the first thing they're going to ask you is, have you been in contact with anyone who is symptomatic? So then I go to Next. It says you can choose whether to share this data with your healthcare authority if you test positive for COVID-19. You are in control of your data. That's good. It's not going to be effective, but that's it. To remember where you go, your phone needs to save your location. See? So don't worry, information never leaves your device unless you explicitly decide to share. So this is what I'm going to do, because it won't work unless I do this. I'm going to tap Location Access and allow notifications, And it says here, allow SafePaths to use your location. See, that's what the phone comes in. That's the thing that comes from Apple. And I'm going to say, allow while using the app. That's the top one, okay? And then I'm going to enable notifications, and I'm going to allow. And usually I don't. I don't like notifications. If I want to see who's talking to me on Facebook, I'm going to go to Facebook and see what's going on. I don't need for them to tell me all the time. But in this particular case, this is what I need to do. So, and now I'm at the point of finish setup. And it says here, SafePaths is privately saving the places you visit and storing them on your phone. Notification about possible contact with COVID-19 are not yet available in your area. Okay, so it's not going to be available here, basically because probably the health authorities aren't using it here. This is just one of the apps. I'm probably going to get a couple more on here because I want to make sure I do this. But I am now in operation. This is how I'm going to do contact tracing, do my part to do contact tracing. It's that simple. All you have to do is go to the Google Play Store or to the App Store for Apple, do type in contact tracing, and you will find several apps that are available to do this for you. And I highly recommend you do that. Now, that's enough for this. Of course, it also has links to places like the Mayo Clinic, where I can get all kinds of information about COVID-19, and I'm getting it from experts, not politicians, not news commentators, not journalists. I'm getting it directly from medical professionals. You can decide for yourself whether you accept that or not. I happen to accept it. So let's talk about arguing about COVID-19. I'm going to have a sip of coffee. That's good stuff. Okay, so this morning, my wife was looking at Nextdoor, which is an application that I've decided to eliminate because the conversation is less helpful than it is helpful. There are other things. Facebook is good, Twitter is good, using a messaging app is good. I can find out what's going on. I'm pretty well connected with my community. I don't necessarily need another app to tell me what's going on. But on it, somebody was asking to share a YouTube video, and oh my God, do I hate information from YouTube videos. Most of them are wrong. Just to be safe, I just say, no, I'm not going to listen to it. But in this case, I did listen to it. And this is from a life coach. I could not find any kind of training for this woman. She runs yoga classes, she does seminars, and she lives in Orange County. And I can tell you right now, she's got a financial motivation to get out of this because she makes her money on seminars. Okay? She's probably not getting much income right now. She can't hold yoga classes, and she can't do private consultations, and whatever it is, she makes her money. So she's got a financial motivation to get this lockdown over with. But she was coming up with an argument that the lockdown in California is illegal. And I don't want to get into all the details. But essentially, she compares this particular outbreak with flu outbreaks every year. And saying it's not as bad as a flu outbreak. Well, okay, I don't want to get into a lot of detail about this, but you can't compare COVID-19 with the flu. They're two different diseases. One has a treatment discipline, which includes vaccines and antivirals. Flu will manifest quicker, like within a few days, as opposed to COVID-19, which takes up to 2 to 3 weeks. But as I said, I don't want to get into too many of those details. Her main argument was that this is not an epidemic because it doesn't match the definition of an epidemic. And then she goes on to compare flu epidemics of the past. But what she misses is the very definition she gives, that gives not only local authorities, but state and federal authorities the right to declare an emergency. And that is, and the primary driver is when it has an unusual number of infections. Not just deaths, but infections. And that's a valid argument. But the question you have to ask, and this shuts down the argument altogether, you can't compare flu outbreaks to COVID-19 outbreaks, as I said, because there's never been a COVID-19 outbreak. We don't know if people have been infected by coronavirus variants in the past because they haven't been deadly that we know of. There hasn't been enough of them to study. So if the definition of an epidemic is an unusual amount of infections, compare the last time we were infected with COVID-19. In fact, compare it to the last time there was an outbreak of infections of a coronavirus. The answer is there hasn't been. So if you have 300 or 30 or 3 infections in a given community of this particular virus, that qualifies as an epidemic because it's never happened before. That's why we're in this situation right now. We know less than we know. We don't know what we don't know. There's lots of stuff we know about the flu, but there's very little we know about the coronavirus. Even now, after all the study we've had, we're still learning new things about what it affects. It affects not just respiratory issues like the flu, because the flu, influenza is a respiratory illness. It attacks the lungs, and it attacks the nasal passages, and it attacks the throat. Coronavirus does that too, but it also attacks the immune systems. It attacks the brain. It attacks the kidneys and livers. It causes paralysis. It causes heart attacks. It causes stroke. That's what we know. And it affects different age groups differently and we don't know what the entire effect is. So that's the argument for you. And when we talk about majority versus minority opinions, what I'm talking is the majority opinion. More than 75% of the people in this country think opening up too soon is more dangerous to the economy overall than it is staying closed. Because we're all in some countries, they're already finding that they opened too soon and they're shutting down again. In some states, in some communities that opened early, they're shutting down again. And that's going to be the pattern if we don't hold true to what we're doing right now. So that's been this issue of Crucial Tech. Get yourself the tracking app. Privacy is an illusion. Be concerned about the greater good. This has been Lou Covey with Crucial Tech. Leave your comments at anchor.fm or drop me an email. You can find me anywhere. Stay safe. Stay home. Wear a mask.